Emma Wilson stood on the porch of her lakeside home, clutching a porcelain teacup between weathered hands. At 62, her body carried the aches of a life well lived, but her mind remained sharp as ever. The old kitchen clock, the one that had belonged to her mother, showed 5:15 in the afternoon. October heat hung heavy and sticky, making her cotton blouse cling uncomfortably to her skin. 6 months. That's how long it had been since she'd buried her only son, Michael. 6 months of waking up to a house that felt too big, too quiet, too full of ghosts. 6 months of walking past his old room, door firmly closed on memories she couldn't bear to face most days. Emma sipped her tea and gazed out at Meridian Lake. The water shimmered like polished glass in the late afternoon sun. This view had once brought her peace. Now it only reminded her of fishing trips with Michael when he was a boy, his laughter echoing across the water. The distant sound of an engine broke the stillness. A cloud of dust rose from the dirt road that wound along the lake's edge. As the vehicle came closer, Emma recognized the silver sedan. Abigail's car, her daughter-in-law, Michael's widow. But something was wrong. The car was moving far too fast for the narrow dirt road, engine roaring unnaturally. Emma had walked that road with Michael countless times. No one drove like that unless they were running from something. The car skidded to a halt at the lake's edge, tires throwing up dust and gravel. Emma's teacup slipped from her fingers, shattering against the porch floor. She hardly noticed, her eyes fixed on Abigail as she flew out of the driver's seat. She was wearing the gray dress Michael had given her for their anniversary. Her usually perfect hair was disheveled, her face flushed as if she'd been crying or screaming. There was something frantic in her movements as she yanked open the trunk with such force Emma thought the hinges might break. Then she saw it, the brown leather suitcase. Emma recognized it immediately. She'd given it to Abigail as a wedding gift 3 years ago. "So you can carry your dreams everywhere," she told her that day. The memory now tasted bitter in her mouth. Abigail struggled to pull the suitcase from the trunk. It was clearly heavy. Emma could see her daughter-in-law's body straining with the effort, arms trembling under the weight. Abigail glanced around nervously, her movements those of a hunted animal. "Abigail!" Emma called out, but the distance was too great, the wind carrying her voice away, or perhaps Abigail simply chose not to hear. With visible effort, Abigail dragged the suitcase to the water's edge. She paused for a moment, seeming to gather her strength, then swung the suitcase once, twice, and on the third swing, hurled it into the lake. The sound of impact sliced through the air. Water splashed upward as the suitcase hit the surface. For a moment it floated, the leather darkening as it soaked up water. Then, gradually, it began to sink. Abigail stood watching for several seconds, her body rigid. Then, as if suddenly remembering herself, she turned and ran back to her car. The engine roared to life, tires spinning in the mud before finding purchase. She was gone as quickly as she'd come, leaving only a trail of dust and questions. Emma remained frozen, her mind struggling to process what she'd just witnessed. Why would Abigail throw away the suitcase? What had been inside it that needed to be disposed of so desperately? A chill ran down Emma's spine despite the heat. Her nursing instincts, honed through 30 years in pediatric care, sensed something terribly wrong. Whatever Abigail had thrown into the lake, it wasn't something as innocent as old clothes or unwanted mementos. Her legs began moving before her mind had fully decided. Decades of responding to medical emergencies had taught Emma's body to act while her mind was still catching up. She hurried down the porch steps, her sandals slapping against the wooden boards, then breaking into a run across her yard. The lake was about 100 yards from her house. Emma ran as fast as her 62-year-old knees would allow. Her breath came in short gasps, her chest burning with exertion. She hadn't run like this in years. As she reached the dirt road, she spotted a man on the opposite shore. Robert Fisher, one of the locals who fished here regularly. He must have seen something because he was already making his way around the lake's edge, fishing rod abandoned. When Emma reached the shore, her lungs felt like they might burst. The suitcase was still visible, now mostly submerged, only a small corner breaking the surface. "Mrs. Wilson," Robert called out, jogging the last few yards to reach her. "What's happening?" "The suitcase," Emma gasped, pointing to the lake. "Need to get it out." Without hesitation, Robert waded into the water. Emma followed, ignoring the cold shock as water soaked through her clothes. The mud at the bottom sucked at her feet, nearly claiming one of her sandals. "It's heavy," Robert said as he grabbed one of the straps. Together, they pulled. The suitcase seemed to fight them, as if reluctant to give up its secrets. That's when Emma heard it. A sound so faint she might have imagined it. A muffled noise coming from inside the waterlogged leather. "Oh, God," she whispered, her blood turning to ice. "Please, please don't let it be what I think it is." With renewed urgency, she and Robert dragged the suitcase toward the shore. By the time they heaved it onto the wet sand, both were soaked and breathless. Emma fell to her knees beside it, fingers trembling as she worked at the zipper. It was stuck, the mechanism resistant after its submersion. Emma's heart pounded against her ribs as she forced the zipper, once, twice. Come on," she muttered through clenched teeth. Finally, the zipper gave way. Emma lifted the lid, and what she saw inside made the world stop spinning. Wrapped in a soaking wet light blue blanket was a baby, a newborn, so small, so fragile, so still. His lips were purple, his skin pale as wax, his eyes closed. For a terrible moment, Emma thought they were too late. "My God," Robert gasped beside her. "Is it?" Emma's nursing training took over. With hands steadier than she felt, she lifted the baby from the suitcase. He weighed almost nothing, his tiny head fitting in the palm of her hand. His umbilical cord had been tied off with ordinary string, not a medical clamp, as if someone had delivered this child at home, in secret, without medical assistance. She pressed her ear to his tiny chest, listening for a heartbeat. For a moment there was nothing. Then, so faint she almost missed it. A flutter. She held her cheek close to his nose and mouth and felt it, the slightest puff of air against her skin. "He's breathing," Emma said, her voice cracking with emotion. "Barely, but he's breathing. Call 911, now." As Robert fumbled for his phone, Emma cradled the baby against her chest. His body was cold, dangerously cold. She knew hypothermia in infants could be fatal within minutes. "My name is Robert Fisher," she heard him saying into the phone. "We've just pulled a baby from Meridian Lake. Yes, a baby. He's alive, but barely. We need an ambulance immediately." Emma tuned out the rest of the conversation, focusing entirely on the child in her arms. She began rubbing his tiny limbs gently, trying to stimulate circulation without causing trauma. The baby made no sound, gave no response. "They're sending an ambulance," Robert said, kneeling beside her. "They said to keep him warm." Emma nodded. "Take off your jacket. We need to wrap him." Robert stripped off his fishing jacket, and Emma carefully wrapped it around the baby, leaving only his face exposed. Years of nursing had taught her the dangers of rewarming too quickly. They needed to stop the heat loss first, then gradually rewarm him to avoid shock. "You're going to be okay," she whispered to the silent infant. "You hear me? You're going to be okay." The distant wail of sirens pierced the air. Robert jumped to his feet, waving his arms to guide the ambulance. Within minutes, the vehicle came bouncing down the dirt road, red and white lights flashing. 2 paramedics jumped out, equipment in hand. The female paramedic, younger with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, took the baby from Emma's arms with professional efficiency. Her partner, an older man with a gray beard, quickly assessed the situation. "Severe hypothermia, possible water aspiration," the woman said after a brief examination. "We need to move now." They transferred this baby to a tiny stretcher, attaching oxygen and monitors with practiced speed. The male paramedic turned to Emma. "You're coming with us," he said, his tone making it clear this wasn't a question. Emma nodded, climbing into the ambulance with legs that suddenly felt unsteady. As she sat on the small side seat, her eyes remained fixed on the tiny form now surrounded by life-saving equipment. How could anyone do this to a child? And Abigail, had she really tried to drown her own baby? Emma couldn't wrap her mind around it. "How did you find him?" the female paramedic asked as she continued working. "In a suitcase, in the lake," Emma replied, her voice hollow with shock. "I saw someone throw it in." The paramedic glanced up, something flickering in her eyes. "Did you see who it was?" Emma opened her mouth, then closed it. If she told them it was Abigail, they would ask why. They would want to know about Michael, about their marriage, about the past 6 months. They would want explanations she wasn't sure she had, but the image of that tiny, cold body in the suitcase burned in her mind. This wasn't about protecting family secrets anymore. "Yes," she finally said. "It was my daughter-in-law, Abigail Wilson." The paramedic exchanged a glance with her partner but said nothing more. The rest of the journey passed in tense silence, broken only by the beeping of monitors and the wail of the siren. At General Hospital, the emergency room doors flew open to admit them. A team of medical personnel surrounded the stretcher, barking orders and medical terms that, despite Emma's nursing background, blurred together in her state of shock. "BP 7040, heart rate 80, temperature 91.4. Start warming at 0.5 degrees per hour. Possible pulmonary edema. Get a chest x-ray." They whisked the baby through double doors, leaving Emma standing in the hallway, dripping lake water onto the sterile hospital floor. A nurse approached her, older, with kind eyes and a name tag that read Nancy. "Ma'am, are you all right? You're soaking wet." Emma looked down at herself as if noticing her state for the first time. "I'm fine. The baby, will he be okay?" "The doctors are doing everything they can. Let's get you into some dry clothes." Nancy led her to a small room and provided hospital scrubs. "The police will want to speak with you. I'll let them know where to find you." True to her word, by the time Emma had changed, a police officer was waiting outside the door. Detective Diana Rivera was a woman in her 40s with shrewd eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. "Mrs. Wilson, I'm Detective Rivera. I understand you witnessed something disturbing today." Emma nodded, suddenly feeling the weight of the day crashing down on her. "Can we sit somewhere?" Rivera led her to a small waiting room, mercifully empty at this hour. Emma sank into a plastic chair, her body aching from exertion and stress. "Tell me everything you saw," Rivera said, notebook open. Emma recounted the events precisely: the car, Abigail, the suitcase, the rescue. Rivera's pen scratched across the paper, her expression revealing nothing. When Emma finished, Rivera looked up. "And you're certain it was Abigail Wilson who threw the suitcase into the lake?" "Absolutely. I've known her for 3 years. It was her." Rivera nodded, making another note. "Mrs. Wilson, there's something you should see." She pulled out her phone, tapped the screen a few times, then turned it to show Emma. It was a security camera image showing Abigail's silver car in a supermarket parking lot. The timestamp read 5:20 p.m., just minutes after Emma claimed to have seen her at the lake. "This was taken at the Riverside Market, 30 miles from Meridian Lake," Rivera said. How do you explain that? Emma stared at the image, confusion washing over her. That's impossible. I saw her. She was at the lake at 5:15. How close were you? Rivera asked. About 100 yards, maybe more. I was on my porch. And you saw her face clearly? Emma hesitated. I saw her from behind most of the time, but it was her car, her build, her hair. She was wearing the gray dress Michael gave her. Rivera's expression softened slightly. Mrs. Wilson, I understand you and Abigail have had a complicated relationship since your son's death. Emma bristled. What are you suggesting, detective? I'm not suggesting anything. I'm trying to establish facts. From what we've gathered so far, Abigail has an alibi for the time in question. Her credit card was used at Riverside Market at 5:18 p.m., and security footage confirms it was her. That's not possible, Emma insisted, her voice rising. I know what I saw. Rivera studied her for a long moment. Mrs. Wilson, do you blame Abigail for your son's death? The question hit Emma like a physical blow. Michael's accident 6 months ago, his car skidding off the road in the rain, crashing into a tree. He had died on impact. Abigail had walked away with minor scratches. That's irrelevant, Emma said stiffly. This is about a baby who was nearly drowned today. We need to consider all angles, Rivera replied, especially since we haven't been able to locate Abigail. Her phone is off, and according to neighbors, she hasn't been home all day. A cold fear gripped Emma's heart. If Abigail was running, it only confirmed her guilt. But that security footage, how was that possible? Detective, Emma said, forcing her voice to remain steady. I may be 62 years old, but I'm not senile, and I'm not making this up. I saw someone throw that suitcase into the lake. If it wasn't Abigail, then who was it? Before Rivera could answer, a doctor appeared in the doorway, young with dark circles under his eyes suggesting a long shift. Mrs. Wilson? I'm Dr. Patel. The baby is stable for now. He's in the neonatal intensive care unit. Emma rose to her feet, relief washing over her. He's going to be okay? Dr. Patel's expression remained cautious. The next 48 hours are critical. He suffered severe hypothermia and aspirated water. His lungs are compromised, but he's responding to treatment, which is a good sign. Can I see him? Emma asked. Are you a relative? Dr. Patel asked. The question hung in the air. Emma had no idea whose baby this was. If it wasn't Abigail's, she had no connection to the child at all. I don't know, she admitted. I'm the one who found him. Dr. Patel exchanged a glance with Detective Rivera. We're running tests to determine the baby's identity. Until we know more, only medical personnel are allowed in the NICU. Emma wanted to protest, but knew it would be futile. Instead, she turned back to Rivera. What happens now? We continue our investigation, Rivera replied. We need to find out who this baby belongs to and who tried to harm him. In the meantime, I'll need you to come to the station tomorrow to make a formal statement. Emma nodded, her thoughts swirling. The security footage troubled her deeply. Had she been mistaken? Was her grief playing tricks on her mind? No, she knew what she'd seen. Someone had thrown that suitcase into the lake, and that someone had looked exactly like Abigail. As Rivera left, a hospital social worker arrived. Sarah Jensen, young and professionally dressed, with a clipboard and a practiced smile that didn't reach her eyes. Mrs. Wilson, I'm Sarah Jensen from Child Protective Services. I need to ask you some questions about the circumstances in which you found the baby. Emma sighed, weariness settling into her bones. She repeated her story yet again, watching Jensen's pen move across her forms. And you have no idea who the baby's parents might be? Jensen asked. None, Emma replied, though Detective Rivera seems to think I imagined the whole thing. Jensen made a non-committal noise. The baby will remain in hospital custody until we can determine his identity. Once he's medically cleared, he'll be placed in emergency foster care while we search for his family. The thought of the tiny baby being handed off to strangers made Emma's chest tighten. She had spent 30 years as a pediatric nurse before retiring. She knew the system, knew it was understaffed and overwhelmed. What if I wanted to help? She found herself asking. I'm a retired pediatric nurse. I have experience with newborns. Jensen looked up, surprise flitting across her features. Are you offering to be a foster parent? I don't know, Emma admitted. I just can't bear the thought of him going to strangers after what he's been through. Jensen's expression softened slightly. That's admirable, Mrs. Wilson, but becoming a foster parent is a lengthy process. There are home studies, background checks, training courses. It takes months. But there must be something I can do in the meantime, Emma insisted. You've already done something extraordinary by saving his life, Jensen said, closing her folder. For now, the best thing you can do is help us find out who he belongs to. Emma nodded, though dissatisfaction churned in her stomach. As Jensen left, Emma found herself alone in the waiting room. The events of the day crashed over her in waves. Abigail at the lake, the suitcase, the baby's cold body, Rivera's skepticism, the security footage that shouldn't exist. None of it made sense, but one thing was certain. A helpless newborn had nearly died today, and someone was responsible. If the police wouldn't believe her about Abigail, she would have to find answers herself. Emma settled deeper into the uncomfortable hospital chair. She wasn't leaving. Not until she knew the baby would survive. Not until she understood what had really happened at Meridian Lake that afternoon. Hours passed. Hospital staff offered her coffee, a sandwich, suggestions that she go home and rest. Emma refused to budge. Every hour she approached the nurse's station for updates on the baby's condition. Each time the answer was the same. Stable, critical, fighting. At 3 a.m, a hospital chaplain appeared. Father Joseph, an elderly man with kind eyes who sat beside Emma in companionable silence. God tests us in many ways, he finally said. This doesn't feel like a test, Emma replied. It feels like a nightmare. Father Joseph nodded, making no attempt to offer platitudes. His presence was comforting nonetheless, proof that Emma wasn't completely alone in her vigil. As dawn approached, Emma found herself nodding off, exhaustion finally winning over determination. She startled awake to find Detective Rivera standing over her, looking as tired as Emma felt. Mrs. Wilson, Rivera said, her voice gentler than the day before. We need to talk. Something's come up in the investigation. Emma straightened, instantly alert. Have you found Abigail? No, Rivera said, sitting in the chair beside Emma. But we've received the preliminary results of the baby's DNA test. Emma's heart skipped a beat. And? Rivera took a deep breath. The baby is a boy, approximately 3 days old according to the medical examination. And Mrs. Wilson, he's your grandson. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Emma gripped the arms of her chair, certain she had misheard. That's impossible, she whispered. Michael died 6 months ago. He didn't have any children. Rivera handed Emma a folder containing several papers. The results are conclusive. We ran the tests twice to be sure. The baby shares approximately 25% of his DNA with you. He is definitively your biological grandson, Michael's son. Emma stared at the papers, the scientific terminology swimming before her eyes. Her mind struggled to process the implications. Michael had fathered a child before his death. A child Abigail had carried for 9 months in secret. A child she had then tried to drown. Abigail never said anything about a pregnancy. Emma said, her voice hollow with shock. How could she hide something like that for 9 months? That's what we're trying to figure out, Rivera replied. According to our calculations, she would have been about a month pregnant when Michael died. It's possible she didn't know herself at that point. But something didn't add up. Why hide the pregnancy after discovering it? Why give birth alone? Why try to kill the baby? There's more, Rivera continued, her expression grave. We've been investigating your son's accident. There are inconsistencies. Emma's gaze snapped up to meet Rivera's. What kind of inconsistencies? Michael's car was examined after the accident. The official report cited wet roads and speed as causes for the crash. But at my request, our forensic team re-examined the evidence. They found indications that the brake lines had been tampered with. The words landed like physical blows. Tampered with? You mean, we believe your son's death wasn't an accident, Mrs. Wilson. It was murder. Emma felt as if all the air had been sucked from the room. The pieces began to fall into place with horrifying clarity. Michael's death, the hidden pregnancy, the attempt to drown the baby, it all pointed to one person. Abigail, Emma said, the name like poison on her tongue. Rivera nodded grimly. She's our prime suspect, but we need proof, and we need to find her. She's completely disappeared. No credit card usage since yesterday. No cell phone activity. Nothing. Emma's mind raced. Her son had been murdered. His child, her grandchild, had nearly met the same fate, and the woman responsible was still out there. The baby, Emma said suddenly. What's going to happen to him now? Sarah Jensen appeared in the doorway, as if summoned by the question. I've just been briefed on the situation, she said, entering the room. Given the circumstances, the state will take temporary custody of the infant while the investigation proceeds. No, Emma said, the word escaping before she could stop it. He's my grandson, my blood. You can't just put him in the system. Jensen's expression was sympathetic but firm. Mrs. Wilson, I understand this is a shock, but there are procedures we need to follow. You aren't a certified foster parent, and there are concerns about your age and emotional state given these revelations. My emotional state? Emma repeated, indignation rising. I'm the one who saved him. I'm a retired pediatric nurse with 30 years of experience. I know how to care for a newborn better than most foster parents you could find. It's not just about capabilities, Jensen explained. This child has experienced severe trauma. He'll need specialized care, therapy, constant medical follow-up. And there's also the matter of your safety. My safety, Rivera stepped in. If Abigail killed Michael and tried to kill the baby, she might see you as a threat, especially if you have custody of her child. We need to consider that risk. Emma stood, her spine straight despite her exhaustion. I've spent my life caring for children in crisis. I can handle specialized care. As for my safety, I've lived alone for 5 years since my husband died. I know how to protect myself. Jensen and Rivera exchanged glances. There is a process, Jensen finally said. If you're serious about seeking custody, we can begin the paperwork. But I have to warn you, it won't be easy or quick. In the meantime, the baby will need to be placed in state care. How long? Emma demanded. 6 weeks at minimum, Jensen replied. If you're lucky, it could be months. And how often would I be able to see him during that time? Supervised visits, twice a week to start. Emma's heart sank. Twice a week, under supervision, as if she were a threat rather than the person who had saved his life. This isn't right, she said quietly. That child has already been through too much. He needs stability, not more strangers. I'm sorry, Mrs. Wilson. That's the best I can offer right now. Rivera touched Emma's arm gently. "Why don't you go home? Get some rest. There's nothing more you can do here tonight. I promise we'll call you if there are any developments with the baby or with Abigail." Emma wanted to refuse, to insist on staying near her newly discovered grandson, but exhaustion was taking its toll. Her body ached, her mind felt foggy, and she knew she needed to gather her strength for the battles ahead. "Can I see him before I go?" she asked. Jensen hesitated, then nodded. "Briefly. I'll arrange it." 20 minutes later, a nurse named Grace Hernandez led Emma through security doors to the neonatal intensive care unit. Emma washed her hands thoroughly and donned a sterile gown before being guided to an incubator in the corner of the room. There he was, her grandson, Michael's son, so small, so fragile, hooked up to tubes and wires, but alive. He had Michael's dark hair, Michael's nose, Michael's long fingers. The resemblance stole Emma's breath away. "Can I touch him?" she whispered. "Yes, just be gentle," Grace replied. "He's still very fragile." Emma reached her hand through the opening in the incubator and delicately touched the baby's tiny hand. His skin was warm now, a vast improvement from the cold, waxy feel when she'd pulled him from the lake. His little fingers instinctively closed around her index finger, a reflex that nonetheless felt like recognition. "Hello, little one," Emma whispered, tears blurring her vision. "I'm your grandma, and I promise I'm going to protect you. No one is ever going to hurt you again." Grace placed a gentle hand on Emma's shoulder. "He needs a name," she said. "For the hospital records, at least until we find his mother, or until a judge decides." Emma thought back to a conversation with Michael over Christmas dinner the previous year. "If I ever have a son," he had said, "I'll name him Nathan, after Dad." "Nathan," Emma said, her voice firm with conviction. "His name is Nathan." The drive home was a blur. Emma's mind kept cycling through the day's revelations. Michael had been murdered. She had a grandson. Abigail had tried to kill her own child. As she pulled into her driveway, the sight of her house, quiet, dark, empty, struck her anew. For 6 months, she had been alone with her grief. Now, suddenly, she had a connection to Michael again, a reason to fight, a purpose. Inside, Emma moved through her nighttime routine mechanically, changing into pajamas, brushing her teeth, taking her blood pressure medication. Her body craved sleep, but her mind refused to quiet. She found herself in Michael's old room, standing in the doorway, staring at the space he had once occupied. It had remained untouched since his death, posters from his college days still on the walls, trophies from high school soccer on the shelves, his bed neatly made with the blue quilt his grandmother had sewn. Emma hadn't been able to pack it away, to erase the evidence of his existence. But now, looking at the room, she saw possibilities instead of just painful memories. This could be Nathan's room someday. The thought both warmed and terrified her. Was she really capable of raising a child at her age? Did she have the energy, the resources, the strength? "One step at a time, Emma," she told herself, her voice sounding strange in the quiet house. She closed the door and went to her own bedroom, knowing she needed rest for whatever lay ahead. Sleep, when it finally came, was fitful and filled with disturbing dreams. Abigail's face, distorted and menacing. The suitcase sinking into dark waters. A baby crying, the sound growing fainter and fainter until it disappeared entirely. Emma woke at dawn, momentarily disoriented before the previous day's events came rushing back. She reached for her phone, half expecting a call from the hospital or Detective Rivera, but there were no missed calls. No news about Nathan. No update on the search for Abigail. After a quick shower and a cup of strong coffee, Emma drove to the police station. Detective Rivera was at her desk, looking as if she hadn't slept much either. "Mrs. Wilson, I was just about to call you," Rivera said, rising to greet her. "We've got some new information." Emma's heart raced. "About Abigail?" "Not directly, no. But we've managed to piece together more of the timeline. Come with me." Rivera led Emma to a small conference room where a whiteboard displayed a timeline of events, photographs, and notes. "We've confirmed that Abigail withdrew $5,000 in cash 3 days ago," Rivera explained, pointing to a bank statement. "That same day, she purchased supplies from a pharmacy. Basic medical items consistent with a home birth." "She planned to have the baby alone," Emma murmured. "It seems that way. We've also found evidence that she rented a remote cabin about 40 miles from here, paid in cash, using a false name. The rental period was for 1 week, starting 5 days ago." "You think that's where she gave birth?" Rivera nodded. "We've got a team searching the cabin now. Preliminary reports indicate evidence consistent with a recent birth. Bloody towels, makeshift medical supplies. No sign of Abigail, though." Emma's mind was racing. "What about the security footage? The supermarket?" Rivera's expression grew troubled. "That's where things get strange. We've reviewed the footage more carefully. The woman using Abigail's credit card keeps her face angled away from the cameras. She's wearing similar clothing to what you described, but we can't confirm it's Abigail." "So someone else could have been using her card?" "It's possible. We're working on enhancing the footage." Emma felt vindicated, but also increasingly concerned. If Abigail had orchestrated such an elaborate plan, giving birth in secret, possibly arranging for someone else to establish an alibi, what else was she capable of? "What about Michael's accident?" Emma asked, her voice tight with suppressed emotion. Rivera sighed, moving to another section of the whiteboard. "We've been re-examining the evidence. The brake lines were definitely tampered with, small punctures that would cause fluid to leak gradually. By the time Michael was driving home that night, the brakes would have been severely compromised." "And you think Abigail did this?" "We've found records of calls from Abigail's phone to a man named Carlos Mendez in the week before Michael's death. Mendez is a freelance mechanic with a record of petty theft and fraud." "Have you talked to him?" "We brought him in yesterday. At first he denied everything, but when confronted with the phone records and evidence of a $2,000 cash deposit to his account the day before Michael's accident, he started talking." Emma's stomach clenched. "What did he say?" "He admitted that Abigail paid him to tamper with Michael's brakes. She told him she just wanted to scare Michael, not kill him. Mendez claims he believed her, that he thought it would just cause a minor accident." "But it killed my son," Emma said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, and now Mendez is facing charges as an accessory to murder." Emma sank into a chair, the weight of confirmation pressing down on her. She had suspected foul play from the beginning, had questioned how Abigail could walk away from the crash with barely a scratch while Michael died instantly. But hearing it confirmed, knowing that Abigail had deliberately orchestrated her son's death, was devastating. "But why?" Emma asked, more to herself than Rivera. "Why kill Michael? They seemed happy." Rivera hesitated, then pulled a file from her stack of documents. "We found something when we were investigating Michael's finances. 2 weeks before he died, he changed his will." She handed Emma a copy of the document. Emma scanned it, her eyes catching on a particular clause. "All remaining assets are to be held in trust for any children born of my marriage to Abigail Wilson, to be distributed at the discretion of the trustee until said children reach the age of 25. "He knew," Emma whispered. "Somehow Michael knew Abigail was pregnant and he changed his will to protect the baby." Rivera nodded. "We think so. And if Abigail killed Michael for his money, she would have discovered afterward that the bulk of his estate was designated for their child, not her." So she carried the pregnancy to term, gave birth alone, and then tried to kill Nathan to claim the entire inheritance, Emma concluded, the horrific logic of it turning her stomach. That's our working theory. It explains why she hid the pregnancy and why she tried to dispose of the baby. With both Michael and the baby gone, she would be the sole beneficiary. Emma thought of the tiny infant she had seen in the NICU, fighting for his life. Her grandson, Michael's son. The child Abigail had been willing to drown for money. "How much?" she asked, her voice hard. "How much money are we talking about?" Michael had a $200,000 life insurance policy with Abigail as the beneficiary. She collected on that 4 months ago. But his estate was worth considerably more, about $300,000 in savings, investments, and property that would go to any children according to his will. $500,000, the price of Michael's life, the price Abigail had been willing to pay by sacrificing her own child. "What happens now?" Emma asked. "We keep looking for Abigail. We've issued an APB, alerted Border Patrol, airports, bus and train stations. Someone will spot her eventually." "And Nathan, what happens to him?" Rivera's expression softened. "That's up to the courts and Child Protective Services. But given that you're his biological grandmother and Abigail is facing murder charges, I'd say your chances of getting custody are good, if that's what you want." "It is," Emma said without hesitation. "He's all I have left of Michael." Rivera nodded. "Then I suggest you start the process immediately. Sarah Jensen can help you with the paperwork." As if on cue, there was a knock at the door, and Jensen entered, carrying a thick folder. "Mrs. Wilson, I've drawn up the initial custody petition forms," she said, taking a seat. "There's still a lot to do. Home study, background check, financial verification, but we can get the ball rolling today." Emma straightened her spine. "Tell me what I need to do." The next few hours were a blur of paperwork and explanations. Criminal background check, medical examination, income verification, home inspection, personal references, a 40-hour childcare course. The list seemed endless, the bureaucracy impenetrable. "How long before I can take Nathan home?" Emma asked as she signed yet another form. "Best case scenario, 6 weeks, Jensen replied. "And that's if everything goes perfectly. More realistically, we're looking at 3 months. 3 months? Emma echoed, dismayed. He'll be in foster care for 3 months while I fill out paperwork? I know it seems excessive, Jensen said, not unkindly. But these procedures exist to protect children. We need to ensure that any placement, even with a biological relative, is in the child's best interest. Emma wanted to argue, but knew it would be futile. The system moved at its own pace, regardless of individual circumstances. All she could do was comply with the requirements and hope for the best. As she left the police station, Emma felt both exhausted and energized. The magnitude of what lay ahead was daunting, not just the custody battle, but the reality of raising a child at her age. Yet there was a clarity of purpose she hadn't felt since Michael's death. "I'm going to get you home, Nathan," she promised aloud as she drove back to the hospital. "And no one is ever going to hurt you again." 3 days after finding Nathan in the lake, Emma spent most of her time divided between the hospital and navigating the labyrinthine bureaucracy of the child welfare system. She'd begun the custody process, submitted her background check forms, and scheduled her home inspection, all while making daily trips to check on Nathan's progress. On this particular morning, Emma arrived at the hospital with a renewed sense of purpose. She'd brought a small stuffed bear, one that had once belonged to Michael, hoping the nurses might place it in Nathan's incubator. Grace Hernandez, the NICU nurse who had taken a special interest in Nathan's case, met Emma in the waiting area. "How is he today?" Emma asked. Grace's face brightened. "Much better. His oxygen levels are improving and he's taking formula well. The doctor is very pleased with his progress. Can I see him? Actually, Grace said, her expression turning serious, Detective Rivera is here. She asked to speak with you as soon as you arrived. She's in the conference room down the hall. Emma's heart quickened. Had they found Abigail? Was there news about the investigation? When Emma entered the conference room, she found not only Rivera, but also Sarah Jensen from Child Protective Services and a distinguished-looking older gentleman she didn't recognize. Mrs. Wilson, Rivera greeted her, gesturing to a chair. Thank you for coming. This is Dr. Alan Mendelsohn, a specialist in forensic genetics. Emma shook his hand, apprehension building in her chest. Is something wrong with Nathan? No, Dr. Mendelsohn assured her. Quite the contrary. The baby is showing remarkable resilience. We've received the complete DNA analysis, Rivera explained, opening a folder. I wanted Dr. Mendelsohn here to explain the results in detail. The doctor adjusted his glasses. Mrs. Wilson, we've conducted a comprehensive genetic analysis comparing samples from you, the baby, and historical samples from your son Michael that were preserved following his autopsy. Emma flinched at the mention of Michael's autopsy, but nodded for him to continue. The results are conclusive, Dr. Mendelsohn stated. Nathan is indeed your biological grandson. The paternity match to Michael is 99.9% certain. Despite already knowing this from the preliminary results, hearing it confirmed with such certainty made the reality sink in deeper. Emma had a grandson, a living connection to Michael. There's more, Rivera added, her tone softening. We've also compared Nathan's DNA with samples obtained from items in Abigail's house. Hairbrush, toothbrush, and other personal effects. Emma waited, tension building. The maternal DNA is a match, Dr. Mendelsohn confirmed. Abigail Wilson is undoubtedly Nathan's biological mother. Though this wasn't surprising, it cemented the horror of what Abigail had done, carrying her own child for 9 months, only to try to kill him after birth. Based on the medical examination, Dr. Mendelsohn continued, we estimate Nathan was born approximately 3 days before you found him. He was slightly premature, probably around 38 weeks gestation, but otherwise healthy at birth. Emma did the math in her head. If Nathan was conceived just before Michael's death, that would make sense. A normal pregnancy was 40 weeks. We've also analyzed the water in his lungs, Dr. Mendelsohn added grimly. It matches the composition of Meridian Lake, confirming he was submerged there and not elsewhere before being disposed of in the lake. The clinical language made Emma wince, but she appreciated the thoroughness of the investigation. Every piece of evidence strengthened the case against Abigail. Rivera leaned forward. Mrs. Wilson, with these results and the evidence from the cabin, we now have enough to charge Abigail with attempted murder when we find her. Combined with the evidence from Mr. Mendez regarding Michael's car, we're building a strong case for first-degree murder as well. Have you found any leads on her whereabouts? Emma asked. Rivera shook her head. Not yet. She's been careful. The security footage from the supermarket was indeed someone else. We've identified the woman as Lisa Donovan, a former college roommate of Abigail's. When questioned, Donovan claimed Abigail asked her to run an errand for her and use her credit card, saying she was too sick to go out herself. So Abigail planned an alibi, Emma said, anger rising in her chest. It appears so. Donovan claims she had no knowledge of Abigail's actual intentions that day. We're still investigating her level of involvement, but her story checks out so far. Emma turned to Jensen. What does this mean for Nathan's custody situation? Jensen consulted her notes. Given these confirmations, it strengthens your position as the logical custodial choice. However, the process still requires following all the standard procedures. Can you expedite anything? Emma pressed. Now that we know for certain he's my grandson? Jensen hesitated. I can request a priority review based on the circumstances, but I can't promise anything. The system is designed to be thorough, not fast. Emma suppressed her frustration. I understand. When can I see Nathan today? Actually, Rivera interjected, Dr. Patel has authorized expanded visitation for you, given the DNA confirmation. You can spend more time with Nathan starting today, though still under nursing supervision. This was the first piece of good news Emma had received in days. Thank you. That means more than you know. As the meeting concluded, Rivera asked Emma to stay behind for a moment. There's one more thing, the detective said once they were alone. We found something in Abigail's house that you should see. She pulled a brown leather journal from her briefcase and handed it to Emma. This was hidden in a locked drawer in Abigail's office. It appears to be Michael's. Emma's breath caught. She recognized the journal immediately. She had given it to Michael for his 30th birthday 3 years ago. With trembling hands, she opened it, recognizing her son's neat handwriting. Take it home, Rivera suggested gently. It might provide some answers. Emma clutched the journal to her chest, thanking Rivera before making her way to the NICU. There, Grace helped her wash up and don a sterile gown. He's been more active today, Grace told her as they approached Nathan's incubator. That's a very good sign. Nathan lay in his incubator, no longer the deathly pale infant Emma had pulled from the lake. His skin had a healthy pink glow, and though he was still connected to monitors, many of the tubes had been removed. His tiny chest rose and fell with stronger breaths than before. Emma reached through the opening in the incubator and gently touched his hand. Immediately, his fingers curled around hers. A reflex, yes, but it felt like recognition, like connection. Hello, sweet boy, Emma whispered. I'm your grandma. I'm going to take care of you. She spent the next hour talking softly to Nathan, telling him about his father, about the kind of man Michael had been, about the home waiting for him. Grace checked in periodically, but gave Emma space to bond with her grandson. When Emma finally left the hospital, it was with a lighter heart, despite the gravity of the situation. Nathan was getting stronger. There was a path, however bureaucratic, to bringing him home. And now she had Michael's journal, perhaps the last window into her son's thoughts before his death. That night, after a simple dinner, Emma settled into her favorite armchair by the fireplace, Michael's journal in her lap. She hesitated before opening it, feeling as if she were intruding on his privacy. But Michael was gone, and the journal might contain crucial information about his relationship with Abigail, about his suspicions, about the child he never knew was coming. The first few entries were mundane, thoughts about work projects, weekend plans, a movie he'd enjoyed. Then Emma found the entries from around the time he met Abigail, 3 years earlier. March 15th, met someone today. Her name is Cynthia Wilson. She's beautiful, smart, mysterious. There's something about her I can't figure out. She intrigues me. Emma paused, confused. Cynthia? Michael had married Abigail, not Cynthia. She read on. March 20th, second date with Cynthia. She's even more fascinating than I initially thought. She's traveled everywhere, speaks 3 languages, knows about art and music in a way that makes me feel like a novice. I'm falling hard. April 10th. Cynthia told me today that Cynthia is her middle name. She goes by it because she never liked her first name, Abigail. I can see why she prefers Cynthia. It suits her elegant demeanor better. But I told her I think Abigail is beautiful too. She laughed and kissed me. Emma's eyes widened. Abigail had initially presented herself as Cynthia? Why the deception? Even about something as simple as her name. The entries continued, documenting the rapid progression of their relationship. Michael seemed besotted, describing Abigail as sophisticated, worldly, the most fascinating woman he'd ever met. But about 6 months in, the tone of the entries began to change. October 3rd. Sometimes I feel like I don't really know Abigail. She never talks about her family. When I ask, she changes the subject. It's like her life started the day we met. November 17th. Found Abigail going through my bank statements today. She said she was just curious about our finances since we're talking about moving in together. But something felt wrong. Why would she look at that without asking first? December 24th. Abigail loved the diamond earrings I gave her for Christmas, but seemed disappointed with the other gifts. I spent weeks choosing books I thought she'd love based on authors she's mentioned. She barely glanced at them. It made me wonder if she's really the avid reader she claimed to be when we met. Emma's uneasiness grew as she read. These small discrepancies, these little moments of doubt, Michael had noticed them but brushed them aside, his love overriding his instincts. The entries became sparser after they married, but took on a more troubled tone. July 15th. Another argument about money. Abigail wants to renovate the kitchen. I explained that I'm trying to build our savings, especially now that we're talking about starting a family soon. She stormed out, came back hours later with a $500 handbag. Said it was on sale and I shouldn't be so controlling. I don't understand her sometimes. September 8th. Mom invited us for dinner. Abigail claimed a migraine at the last minute. This is the 3rd time she's avoided family gatherings. I'm starting to think she simply doesn't like my family, though she won't admit it. Emma remembered those canceled dinners, the excuses Abigail had made. At the time, Emma had attributed it to the natural tensions between mothers-in-law and daughters-in-law. Now, it seemed part of a pattern of deception. Then came the entries from the month before Michael's death. February 3rd. Found a pregnancy test in the bathroom trash. Positive. Abigail hasn't said anything. Why is she keeping this from me? February 5th. I confronted Abigail about the pregnancy test. She seemed shocked, then angry that I had invaded her privacy. When I asked why she hadn't told me, she said she wasn't ready, that she was scared. I told her I was thrilled, that we would figure it out together. She just stared at me, then locked herself in the bathroom for an hour. February 7th. Something isn't right. Abigail has been distant since I discovered the pregnancy. When I try to talk about it, about plans for the baby, she shuts down. Today, she finally admitted she doesn't want to have it. Said she's not ready to be a mother, that she wants to travel, to live, not be tied down to a baby. I was stunned. We've talked about having children since we got engaged. This isn't like her. Emma's heart ached for her son, caught in a situation he couldn't have anticipated with a woman he clearly didn't truly know. February 10th. Changed my will today. With the baby coming, I wanted to make sure everything was protected. If anything happens to me, everything goes to our child, held in trust until they're old enough to manage it. I don't trust Abigail with money anymore, not after seeing how she spends. 500 shoes, $1,000 purses, always wanting more. A baby isn't an accessory. It's a life, and I'm going to protect it no matter what. The entry sent a chill down Emma's spine. Michael had sensed the danger, had taken steps to protect his unborn child, steps that may have cost him his life. The final entry was dated February 15th, the day Michael died. Abigail threatened me today, said I would regret pressuring her about the baby. I don't know what that means, but it scares me. I'm going to talk to Mom tomorrow, tell her everything. Maybe she can help me figure out what to do. I just know I can't let Abigail hurt our child. I will protect him, always. Tears streamed down Emma's face as she closed the journal. Michael had planned to come to her the very next day. If he had lived just one more day, everything might have been different. She might have been able to help him, to warn him about Abigail. He might still be alive, preparing to welcome his son. Instead, he died that night. Abigail had made good on her threat, arranging for the brakes on his car to fail, ensuring he would never make it to that conversation with his mother. And yet, despite Abigail's best efforts, Michael's son had survived. Nathan was alive, growing stronger each day, a living testament to Michael's determination to protect him. "I'll finish what you started, Michael," Emma whispered to the empty room. "I promise I'll protect him, just like you wanted to." In that moment, her path became crystal clear. She would fight with everything she had to bring Nathan home, to raise him with the love and security Michael would have provided. And she would make sure Abigail faced justice for the lives she had so callously attempted to destroy. The days that followed took on a grueling rhythm. Every morning, Emma visited Nathan at the hospital, watching with joy as he grew stronger, more alert, more responsive to her voice and touch. Dr. Patel was amazed by his progress, calling him a medical miracle given what he'd endured. Afternoons were consumed by the custody process, meetings with social workers, paperwork, and preparations for the home study. Emma had given Michael's journal to Detective Rivera, who confirmed it would be crucial evidence against Abigail. The search for the fugitive continued, but there had been no significant leads. One week after finding Nathan, Emma sat in Sarah Jensen's office, reviewing the requirements for temporary custody. "Let me be clear about what you're facing," Jensen said, adjusting her glasses. "The process is designed to be thorough, not convenient. At 62, you're older than our typical foster or adoptive parents, which means additional scrutiny." "I understand," Emma replied, her spine straight. "But I was a pediatric nurse for 30 years. I've cared for thousands of infants in far more critical condition than Nathan." "Your professional background is certainly a point in your favor," Jensen acknowledged. "But caring for a child 24/7 is different from nursing shifts. The home study will assess whether your physical environment is suitable, whether you have adequate financial resources, and whether you have the energy and support system necessary to raise a child into adulthood." The blunt assessment stung, but Emma appreciated Jensen's honesty. "What exactly will I need to demonstrate?" Jensen handed her a thick folder. "This contains all the requirements. You'll need to complete a criminal background check, though I don't anticipate issues there. A full psychological evaluation to assess your emotional readiness, especially given your recent loss. A medical exam to verify you're physically capable. Verification of income and assets to ensure financial stability. An inspection of your home to check for safety and suitability for an infant." Emma paged through the documents, the magnitude of the task ahead sinking in. "Additionally," Jensen continued, "you'll need personal references from at least 3 non-family members attesting to your character and capability, and you must complete a 40-hour childcare course." 40 hours? Emma couldn't hide her surprise. "I've raised a child. I've spent my career caring for infants." "The course is mandatory for all potential guardians," Jensen stated firmly. "It covers current best practices in childcare, which may have changed since your professional days or since you raised your son." Emma bit back a retort, reminding herself that Jensen wasn't the enemy. The social worker was simply enforcing rules designed to protect children. "How long will all this take?" she asked instead. "If you're diligent and lucky, 6 weeks. If there are any complications or delays, it could stretch to 3 months or more. And in the meantime, Nathan will be placed in temporary foster care once he's discharged from the hospital. You'll be granted visitation rights, twice weekly to start, under supervision." The thought of Nathan going to strangers, of seeing him only twice a week, was almost unbearable. But Emma knew that showing anger or frustration would only hurt her case. Instead, she took a deep breath and asked the most practical question she could think of. When will the home inspection take place? We can schedule it for next week. That gives you time to prepare your house for an infant. You'll need a crib, changing table, appropriate childproofing, and so forth. Emma nodded, mentally calculating costs. Her pension and savings were adequate for her own needs, but adding the expenses of raising a child would stretch her budget significantly. Still, she would make it work. She had to. "I'll be ready," she promised. As Emma left the office, her phone rang. It was Grace from the hospital. "Mrs. Wilson, Dr. Patel wanted me to let you know that Nathan is doing exceptionally well. If he continues at this rate, he could be discharged within 10 days. 10 days, less than 2 weeks before Nathan would leave the hospital and go either to Emma's home or to foster care. The timeline suddenly compressed, adding urgency to an already overwhelming situation. Emma drove directly to the lake house, her mind racing with all that needed to be done. The spare bedroom, currently used for storage, would need to be converted into a nursery. She'd need to purchase all the necessities for a newborn. The house would need to be thoroughly child-proofed. As she pulled into her driveway, she noticed a man standing on her porch. Tom Reynolds, the fisherman who had helped her rescue Nathan. "Mr. Reynolds," she greeted him, surprised. "What brings you here?" "Mrs. Wilson." He extended his hand. "I wanted to check how the little one is doing, and call me Tom, please." "He's improving daily," Emma said, shaking his hand. "The doctors are amazed by his progress. And I'm Emma." "That's wonderful news." Tom's weathered face broke into a smile. "I've been thinking about him, and you, since that day. It's not every day you help pull a baby from a lake." There was something about Tom's direct manner that Emma found comforting. "Would you like to come in for coffee? I could use a break from thinking about all I have to do." Over coffee at her kitchen table, Emma found herself sharing the entire situation. Nathan being her grandson, Abigail's disappearance, the custody battle ahead. Tom listened attentively, asking occasional questions, but mostly just providing a sympathetic ear. "That's quite a challenge you're facing," he said when she finished. "Is there anything I can do to help?" Emma was about to politely decline when she remembered Jensen's words about needing personal references. "Actually, there is. I need character references for the custody application. Would you be willing to provide one? I know we barely know each other, but you were there that day." "I'd be honored," Tom replied without hesitation. "And I might be able to help in other ways, too. I'm a retired family law attorney. I specialized in custody cases before I retired 5 years ago." Emma stared at him, momentarily speechless. "You're an attorney? I thought you were just an old man who fishes." Tom chuckled. "That's what retirement looks like for me now. But I practiced law for 30 years, and I still keep my license active." It seemed too fortuitous to be true. Would you be willing to advise me through this process? I'd pay your regular fees, of course." Tom waved away the suggestion. "No fee necessary. Consider it my contribution to Nathan's future. From what you've told me, that boy deserves every advantage we can give him." Relief washed over Emma. Having an experienced family law attorney on her side could make all the difference in navigating the complex legal system. "Thank you," she said simply, feeling for the first time since finding Nathan that she wasn't completely alone in this fight. With Tom's guidance, Emma spent the next week preparing for both the home inspection and the upcoming custody hearing. She converted the spare room into a nursery, painting the walls a soft yellow and setting up the crib, changing table and rocking chair she'd purchased with a significant portion of her savings. Tom helped her draft responses to the custody petition forms, ensuring her application highlighted her strengths, her medical background, her stable home environment, her biological connection to Nathan. He also recommended a psychologist for her mandatory evaluation, a colleague he trusted to be fair and thorough. The home inspection, when it came, was more invasive than Emma had anticipated. 2 women from Child Protective Services examined every corner of her house, checking smoke detectors, water temperature, cabinet locks, outlet covers, window guards. They asked about her emergency plans in case of fire, flood, or medical crisis. They inspected her refrigerator and pantry, questioned her about her daily routine, and took copious notes throughout. "You'll need to install a gate at the top and bottom of the stairs," one inspector noted, "and the cleaning supplies in the laundry room need to be in a locked cabinet." Emma nodded, adding these items to her mental list. The inspectors were thorough but not unkind, and she appreciated their attention to detail, even as it highlighted how much work still lay ahead. The psychological evaluation was scheduled for the following day. Emma met with Dr. Lydia Chen, a petite woman with a calm demeanor and penetrating gaze. For 3 hours, Dr. Chen asked questions about Emma's childhood, her marriage, her relationship with Michael, her grief process after his death, and her motivations for seeking custody of Nathan. "How do you feel about Abigail now?" Dr. Chen asked at one point. Emma considered the question carefully. "I'm angry," she admitted. "Furious, actually. She killed my son and tried to kill my grandson. But I'm trying not to let that anger consume me. Nathan deserves a guardian who can focus on his future, not on seeking revenge for the past." Dr. Chen nodded, making a note. "And how will you explain to Nathan when he's older what happened to his parents?" "With age-appropriate honesty," Emma replied. "When he's very young, I'll simply tell him that his daddy loved him very much, but had to go to heaven, and that his mommy wasn't able to take care of him. As he gets older and can understand more, I'll share more details, always emphasizing that none of what happened was his fault, and that he is loved and wanted." The evaluation continued, touching on Emma's support system, her health, her financial resources, and her plans for Nathan's future. By the end, Emma felt emotionally drained, but hopeful that she had presented herself honestly and capably. 2 weeks after finding Nathan, Emma attended her first court hearing regarding temporary custody. Tom accompanied her, sitting beside her at the plaintiff's table. Sarah Jensen was present, along with a court-appointed guardian ad litem for Nathan, a young attorney named Marcus Diaz, whose job was to represent Nathan's best interests. Judge Eleanor Harris, a woman in her 50s with gray hair pulled back in a severe bun, reviewed the preliminary reports from the home inspection and psychological evaluation. Her expression revealed nothing as she flipped through the documents. "Mrs. Wilson," Judge Harris finally said, looking up, "I've reviewed your petition for temporary custody of your grandson, Nathan Wilson. This is a highly unusual case." Emma nodded, her mouth suddenly dry. "The circumstances surrounding this child's birth and abandonment are horrific," the judge continued. "His mother is currently a fugitive facing multiple felony charges, including attempted murder. His father is deceased, apparently murdered by the same woman who tried to kill the child. You are his only known blood relative." The clinical summation made Emma's heart ache, but she maintained her composure. "I've reviewed the reports from Child Protective Services, including your home inspection and Dr. Chen's psychological evaluation. I've also spoken with the medical team caring for Nathan. All agree that you are dedicated, knowledgeable, and genuinely concerned for this child's welfare." Emma allowed herself a flicker of hope. "However," Judge Harris continued, "there are legitimate concerns about your age and the lack of other family support. Raising a child is demanding at any age, but particularly challenging for someone in their 60s. Additionally, you are still working through grief over your son's death, which could complicate your relationship with this child." Tom placed a supportive hand on Emma's arm as the judge spoke. "Mr. Diaz, as guardian ad litem, what is your recommendation regarding temporary custody?" Marcus Diaz stood. Your Honor, after reviewing all available information and visiting Nathan in the hospital, I believe it would be in his best interest to grant temporary custody to Mrs. Wilson with certain conditions in place. And those conditions would be regular check-ins with Child Protective Services, continued psychological support for Mrs. Wilson to address grief issues, and the establishment of a robust support system to assist with childcare. I would also recommend revisiting the custody arrangement in 6 months to ensure it remains in Nathan's best interest. Judge Harris nodded thoughtfully. Ms. Jensen, what is the recommendation from Child Protective Services? Jensen stood, straightening her jacket. Your Honor, while we acknowledge the concerns about Mrs. Wilson's age and circumstances, we believe she is the best available placement for Nathan at this time. Her medical background is particularly valuable given his traumatic start in life. We support Mr. Diaz's recommended conditions. Emma squeezed Tom's hand, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. Both the guardian ad litem and CPS were supporting her petition. Judge Harris made a few more notes, then looked up. Mrs. Wilson, are you prepared to accept the conditions outlined by Mr. Diaz? Yes, Your Honor, Emma said clearly. Absolutely. And do you understand that this is a temporary arrangement subject to review? Permanent custody decisions will be made at a later date. I understand, Your Honor. Judge Harris nodded decisively. Then, after reviewing all evidence and recommendations, I am granting temporary custody of Nathan Wilson to his grandmother, Emma Wilson, for a period of 6 months. During that time, there will be monthly visits from Child Protective Services, continued psychological support, and at the end of the 6 months, we will review whether custody should become permanent. The gavel struck, and suddenly Emma could breathe again. She had done it. She would be bringing Nathan home. As they left the courtroom, Tom squeezed her shoulder. Congratulations. This is a significant victory. It's just temporary, Emma reminded him, though she couldn't suppress her smile. It's a crucial first step, Tom corrected. And judges rarely reverse temporary custody decisions without compelling reason. You've cleared the highest hurdle. Emma's phone buzzed with a text from Grace. Nathan gained another ounce today. Dr. Patel says discharge possible in 5 days if progress continues. 5 days. In just 5 days, she could bring her grandson home. For the first time since finding him in that suitcase, Emma felt a surge of pure, uncomplicated joy. But as she drove home to continue preparing for Nathan's arrival, a shadow of fear crept back. Abigail was still out there somewhere. The woman who had killed Michael and tried to kill Nathan remained a threat as long as she was free. Would she try to reclaim her son? Would she seek revenge against Emma for interfering with her plans? Emma pushed the fears aside. She couldn't control when or if Abigail would be caught. All she could do was focus on providing Nathan with the safe, loving home he deserved. Everything else would have to be dealt with as it came. 4 days before Nathan's scheduled discharge from the hospital, Detective Rivera called Emma with a request to meet. They arranged to convene at a small cafe halfway between Emma's house and the police station. Rivera was already seated at a corner table when Emma arrived, a thick folder on the table before her. The detective looked tired, with dark circles under her eyes suggesting many sleepless nights. "Thank you for meeting me," Rivera said as Emma sat down. "I wanted to update you on the investigation in person." Emma ordered coffee, then leaned forward. "Have you found Abigail?" "Not yet, but we're getting closer. We've traced her movements immediately after the incident at the lake. A gas station camera caught her car heading north on Highway 16 about an hour after you saw her. She had changed clothes and was wearing a baseball cap, but the facial recognition software confirmed it was her. Where was she going? That's what we're trying to determine. Highway 16 leads to several possible destinations, including the Canadian border. We've alerted Border Patrol and have officers checking hotels, motels, and rental properties along the route. Emma sipped her coffee, trying to mask her disappointment. So she could be anywhere. She can't hide forever, Rivera assured her. Her photo is being circulated nationwide. Someone will spot her eventually. But will that be before or after she tries again? Emma couldn't help asking. Rivera's expression grew serious. That's actually why I wanted to meet. We've been analyzing the evidence, including Michael's journal, and we believe Abigail may have been planning this for a long time. She opened the folder and pulled out several documents. We've been investigating Abigail's background. Much of what she told Michael appears to have been fabricated. She claimed to be from Seattle, to have attended Stanford, to have worked as a gallery curator before moving here. None of that was true? None of it. We can find no record of an Abigail Wilson or Abigail Cynthia Wilson attending Stanford. The gallery she claimed to have worked for has never heard of her. And when we contacted the references she provided when applying for her job at the local museum, they turned out to be friends using false names. Emma struggled to process this information. So who is she really? That's where it gets interesting. Fingerprints from her house match those of a woman named Abigail Prescott, who was investigated for insurance fraud in Phoenix 5 years ago. The case was dropped for lack of evidence, but the investigator noted suspicious circumstances surrounding the death of her fiancé in a boating accident 3 months before the insurance claim. A chill ran down Emma's spine. You think she's done this before? We're looking into it. Phoenix PD is reopening the case based on our findings. If it's the same woman, this establishes a pattern that would strengthen our case against her. Emma thought of Michael's journal entries, his gradual realization that the woman he married wasn't who she claimed to be. Michael suspected something was wrong. In his journal, he wrote about inconsistencies in her stories, about how she never talked about her past. Rivera nodded. Men in love often overlook red flags. By the time Michael began to piece things together, it was too late. She hesitated, then pulled another document from the folder. There's one more thing. We found this in a safety deposit box registered to Abigail. She slid a legal document across the table. Emma scanned it, her blood running cold. It was an application for a passport for an infant, filed 3 months before Nathan's birth. The child's name was listed as James Wilson, with Abigail as the mother and Michael as the deceased father. She was planning to leave the country with a baby, Emma whispered. But if she intended to keep him, why try to drown him? Rivera took back the document. We believe her original plan changed when she discovered Michael's will. According to our financial investigation, Abigail contacted a lawyer specializing in trusts 2 days after Michael's funeral. We suspect she learned then that Michael had changed his will to leave everything to his child, not to her. So she was going to take the baby and flee the country, using his identity to access Michael's money, Emma concluded. But when she discovered the trust restrictions, she decided the baby was a liability rather than an asset. Rivera finished grimly. With both Michael and the baby gone, she would be the sole beneficiary of everything. The cold calculation behind these actions made Emma physically ill. How could anyone, let alone a mother, view a child as nothing more than a financial obstacle to be eliminated? We believe she's trying to leave the country, Rivera continued. She had a false passport in the same safety deposit box under the name Catherine Lewis. We flagged the name with border control in airports. Emma thought of Nathan, growing stronger each day in the hospital, blissfully unaware of how close he had come to death at his own mother's hands. Do you think she'll try to get to him again? Rivera didn't sugarcoat her answer. It's possible. With her escape route potentially compromised and a nationwide search underway, she might become desperate. I'm assigning an officer to patrol your neighborhood once Nathan comes home, and I'd recommend installing a security system if you don't already have one. Emma nodded, mentally adding this to her growing list of preparations. I'll do whatever it takes to keep him safe." "I know you will," Rivera said, her professional demeanor softening slightly. "Nathan is lucky to have you. Not every child in his situation finds someone so determined to protect them." As they parted ways, Emma felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her shoulders. She wasn't just fighting a bureaucratic system to gain custody of her grandson. She was potentially positioning herself between Nathan and a woman who had already demonstrated a willingness to kill for money. But rather than discouraging her, this knowledge only strengthened Emma's resolve. She would not fail Nathan the way she had failed Michael, by not seeing the danger until it was too late. That evening, Emma met with a security company to install a comprehensive system in her home. Cameras, motion sensors, panic buttons connected directly to the police station. It was another expense she could ill afford, but Nathan's safety was non-negotiable. As she reviewed the security options, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that Abigail was still out there, watching, waiting. The woman had proven herself to be methodical, patient, and utterly without conscience. If she decided Nathan remained a threat to her freedom or her financial interests, would a security system be enough to stop her? Emma pushed the thought away. She couldn't live in constant fear. All she could do was take every possible precaution and trust that the police would find Abigail before she could harm anyone else. 3 days later, Emma stood in the NICU, listening carefully as Dr. Patel and Grace provided instructions for Nathan's care after discharge. The tiny baby who had once been pale and unresponsive now looked like any other newborn, pink-cheeked, alert, his dark eyes following movement, and his tiny fingers grasping reflexively at anything placed in his palm. "His lungs have made a remarkable recovery," Dr. Patel explained, "but we'll want to follow up weekly for the first month to ensure there are no developing complications." "I'll schedule all the necessary appointments," Emma assured him, carefully transferring Nathan from the hospital bassinet to the car seat she had brought. Nathan squirmed a bit but didn't cry, his eyes wide as if curious about this new development. "You're a natural," Grace commented, watching Emma secure the straps with practiced ease. "It's like riding a bicycle," Emma replied with a small smile. "Some skills you never forget." As she signed the discharge papers, a wave of emotion swept over Emma. Joy at finally bringing Nathan home, determination to give him the life Michael would have wanted for him, and an undercurrent of fear that remained despite all the precautions she had taken. "You're going to be just fine," Grace assured her, seemingly reading her thoughts. "And remember, I'm just a phone call away if you need advice or just someone to talk to." Emma was grateful for the offer. Grace had become more than just Nathan's nurse over the past weeks. She had become a friend and ally in Emma's fight to provide Nathan with a safe, loving home. With Nathan securely fastened in his car seat, Emma made her way out of the hospital, Detective Rivera's warnings echoing in her mind. She scanned the parking lot cautiously before approaching her car, checking the back seat before placing Nathan inside. These were precautions she had never imagined taking just weeks ago, but now they seemed essential. The drive home was tense, Emma constantly checking her rearview mirror for any sign of being followed. Nathan slept peacefully, unaware of his grandmother's vigilance. As Emma pulled into her driveway, she was surprised to see Tom Reynolds and Grace waiting on her porch. Grace had mentioned stopping by later in the day, but seeing them both there was unexpected. "Welcome home, Nathan," Tom called as Emma carefully removed the car seat from the back of her car. "We thought you might appreciate some help on the first day," Grace explained, coming down the steps to assist with the baby. Emotion welled up in Emma's throat. "Thank you," she managed, overwhelmed by their thoughtfulness. Inside, Emma gave them a tour of the nursery she had prepared, pointing out the security features she had installed and the supplies she had gathered. "You've thought of everything," Grace said approvingly. "Almost everything," Tom corrected with a smile, presenting Emma with a small gift bag. Inside was a baby monitor with a video function. "Just a little extra security," he explained. Emma was touched by their support. Having lived independently for years since her husband's death, she had grown accustomed to handling everything alone. The presence of these two people, one a new friend, one barely more than an acquaintance before Nathan came into their lives, reminded her that she didn't have to face this challenge in isolation. As they settled in the living room, Nathan beginning to stir in his bassinet, Emma realized something important. She was building a new family for Nathan, a network of people who cared about him and would help protect him. If Abigail had calculated that Emma would be an easy target, an elderly woman living alone, she had severely underestimated the resources Emma was prepared to mobilize for her grandson's sake. "I think someone's hungry," Grace observed as Nathan began to make small mewling sounds. Emma prepared a bottle with practiced efficiency, then settled into the rocking chair to feed him. As Nathan's tiny mouth worked at the nipple, his dark eyes, so like Michael's, fixed on Emma's face, she made a silent promise to her son and to this precious child. "You're home now, Nathan," she whispered, "and I will do everything in my power to make sure you stay safe, loved, and protected. Always." 3 months after bringing Nathan home, Emma had settled into a new rhythm of life. The challenges of raising an infant in her 60s were substantial, but she met them with the determination and practical knowledge gained from her years as a pediatric nurse. Nathan thrived under her care, growing from the fragile newborn she'd rescued from the lake into a chubby, alert 3-month-old who had recently discovered his own smile. On this particular morning, Emma sat in the rocking chair by the nursery window. Nathan nestled in her arms as she gave him his morning bottle. Sunlight streamed through the curtains, casting a warm glow across the room she had so lovingly prepared. Nathan's tiny fingers curled around her index finger as he drank, his dark eyes, so like Michael's, fixed on her face with what seemed like recognition and trust. "You're getting to be such a big boy," Emma murmured, gently stroking his cheek. In these quiet moments, the weight of responsibility felt lighter, overshadowed by the simple joy of caring for this precious child. The serenity of the moment was broken by the ringing of the doorbell. Emma glanced at the clock. 8:30 a.m., too early for casual visitors. A flutter of apprehension passed through her. Even after 3 months, she remained vigilant, aware that Abigail was still at large. Shifting Nathan to her shoulder, Emma carried him downstairs. The security system she'd installed displayed a video feed of the front porch, revealing Grace Hernandez standing at the door with a paper bag in hand. "Just Nurse Grace," Emma reassured both herself and Nathan as she disarmed the security system and opened the door. "Good morning," Grace greeted them with a warm smile. "I brought those homemade teething biscuits I mentioned, my grandmother's recipe. Perfect for when this little guy starts cutting teeth in a few months." "You're a lifesaver," Emma said gratefully, ushering her friend inside. Grace had become a regular visitor and an invaluable support, stopping by several times a week to check on Nathan and provide Emma with much-needed adult conversation. As they settled in the kitchen, Emma transferring Nathan to his bouncy seat, Grace's expression grew serious. "Any word from Detective Rivera?" she asked, lowering her voice, though Nathan was too young to understand. Emma shook her head. "Nothing concrete. The last update was a possible sighting in Vermont 2 weeks ago, but it turned out to be a false alarm." The continued absence of news about Abigail's whereabouts was both a relief and a constant source of anxiety. Every day without incident was a day Nathan remained safe, yet the lack of closure kept Emma in a state of heightened alertness that was exhausting to maintain. "I keep thinking she must have fled the country by now," Grace said, preparing coffee for them both. Surely she wouldn't risk staying in the U.S. with a nationwide manhunt underway. "Rivera doesn't think so," Emma replied. "All ports and borders are being monitored. and Abigail can't access her financial accounts without leaving a trail. Rivera believes she's lying low somewhere, possibly with an accomplice. The thought of Abigail having help was particularly troubling. Who would assist a woman who had murdered her husband and attempted to kill her own child? Emma had pondered this question countless times, her mind circling back to Lisa Donovan, the friend who had created Abigail's alibi at the supermarket. Though Donovan claimed ignorance of Abigail's true intentions that day, Emma couldn't help wondering if there was more to that relationship than had been revealed. As if reading her thoughts, Grace asked, "What about that friend of hers, the one who used her credit card?" "Donovan's still being monitored, but there's been no contact as far as I know." Emma sighed, bouncing the seat gently when Nathan began to fuss. "Sometimes I think we're looking in all the wrong places. Abigail proved herself to be extraordinarily cunning. She wouldn't make obvious moves." The conversation shifted to lighter topics as they finished their coffee. Nathan's upcoming doctor's appointment, Grace's plans for her vacation next month, the community garden Tom had started at the senior center. These normal, everyday discussions provided Emma with a semblance of the regular life she was trying to create for Nathan, despite the shadow that hung over them. After Grace left for her shift at the hospital, Emma bundled Nathan into his stroller for their morning walk. The late spring weather was perfect, warm sunshine tempered by a gentle breeze off the lake. These daily walks had become an important part of their routine, providing Emma with exercise and fresh air, while introducing Nathan to the natural world beyond their secure home. As always, Emma followed a carefully planned route, staying in open areas where she could easily see anyone approaching. She kept her cell phone in her pocket, the panic button app Rivera had installed readily accessible. These precautions had become second nature, integrated into the fabric of their daily life without disrupting it entirely. They had just reached the lakefront path when Emma's phone rang. Checking the display, she saw it was Tom Reynolds. "Good morning," she answered, steering the stroller with one hand. "Nathan and I are just enjoying the sunshine." "Emma!" Tom's tone immediately alerted her that something was wrong. "Are you home?" "No, we're on our morning walk by the lake. Why? What's happened?" "I just got a call from Rivera. There's been activity on one of Abigail's dormant credit cards. A purchase at a gas station 50 miles north of you, early this morning." Emma's heart skipped a beat. "You think she's coming here?" "Rivera doesn't want to alarm you unnecessarily, but she thinks it's a possibility. She sent in a patrol car to your neighborhood and wanted me to make sure you're aware." Emma glanced around, suddenly seeing the peaceful lakefront as a landscape of potential threats. "We'll head home right away." "I'll meet you there," Tom said. Just as a precaution. Emma ended the call and immediately turned the stroller around, walking briskly back toward her house. Nathan, oblivious to the sudden change in plans, babbled happily at the passing scenery. "Everything's fine, sweetheart," Emma assured him, though her own pulse had quickened. "We're just going to have a nice visit with Tom." By the time they reached the house, a police cruiser was parked across the street, and Tom's truck was in her driveway. Tom himself was waiting on the porch, his weathered face creased with concern. "Any news?" Emma asked as she unstrapped Nathan from the stroller. Tom shook his head. "Nothing more than what I told you. Rivera said the card was used to buy gas and some food items. The station's security camera was broken, so there's no visual confirmation." Inside, Emma secured all doors and windows while Tom entertained Nathan in the living room. The ordinary domestic scene was now overlaid with tension, like a discordant note in an otherwise harmonious melody. Emma's phone rang again at noon. This time it was Rivera herself. "Mrs. Wilson, I just wanted to update you personally. We've dispatched officers to the area where the card was used, but so far there's been no further activity. It's possible the card was used by someone else, or that Abigail is simply passing through the region without specific plans to approach your area." "But you thought it was important enough to send a patrol car," Emma noted. Standard precaution, Rivera replied. Given the case history, we err on the side of caution. Officer Martinez will remain in your vicinity through the evening. I'll let you know if we learn anything more concrete. After hanging up, Emma joined Tom in the living room, where he was reading a picture book to Nathan. The sight momentarily eased her anxiety. This is what normal life should be. A grandmother and family friend enjoying a quiet afternoon with a baby. I should probably head out, Tom said as Emma took Nathan for his afternoon feeding. Unless you prefer I stay. Emma considered the offer. While part of her wanted the reassurance of having someone else in the house, she also recognized the importance of maintaining normalcy. Fear couldn't be allowed to dictate every decision. We'll be fine, she decided. Officer Martinez is outside, and the security system is active. Besides, Nathan and I have our routine. Tom nodded, understanding her determination to preserve a sense of ordinary life amid extraordinary circumstances. Call if you need anything, day or night. After Tom left, Emma settled into the familiar rhythm of afternoon care, feeding Nathan, bathing him, playing with him on the floor mat as she narrated her actions, providing the language stimulation Dr. Patel had emphasized was important for development. By evening, the earlier alarm had receded to a background awareness rather than acute anxiety. As darkness fell, Emma completed her nightly security check. All doors and windows locked, security system armed, baby monitor activated. Nathan had fallen asleep easily after his evening bottle, his small chest rising and falling with the deep, regular breaths of infant slumber. Emma stood watching him for several minutes, as she did each night, marveling at the perfect little person he was becoming. Sleep tight, sweet boy, she whispered, gently closing the nursery door. Emma settled on the couch with a novel, though her attention frequently drifted to the security system display that showed the quiet exterior of her home. Officer Martinez's cruiser remained visible at the end of the street, its presence reassuring. Around 10 p.m., just as Emma was considering going to bed, her phone rang. The display showed an unknown number. Her first instinct was to ignore it. Telemarketing calls came at all hours despite being on the do not call list, but something made her answer. Hello? Silence greeted her, then the sound of soft breathing. Who is this? Emma demanded, sitting upright. Hello, Emma. The voice sent ice through her veins, soft, cultured, with the slight lift at the end of sentences that had once seemed charming but now felt menacing. Abigail. Emma's grip on the phone tightened. I see you've been playing house with my son. The words were delivered with chilling casualness. Emma's mind raced. She needed to keep Abigail talking while somehow alerting Rivera. The panic button app was on her phone, the same phone she was currently using for this call. Nathan is safe and well, Emma replied, keeping her voice steady as she moved toward the kitchen where the landline was located. Which is remarkable given that you tried to drown him. A cold laugh came through the line. Is that what you think happened? How dramatic. I suppose the police have filled your head with all sorts of theories. I know what I saw, Abigail. Emma reached the kitchen and silently lifted the landline receiver. I pulled him from the lake myself. A regrettable moment of confusion, Abigail replied smoothly. Postpartum psychosis, my lawyer will call it. A temporary break with reality following a traumatic home birth. Quite common, actually. The calculated nature of this response chilled Emma to the bone. Abigail had already formulated her defense strategy. No jury will believe that, Emma said, dialing Rivera's number on the landline while keeping Abigail talking. Not with the evidence against you. Evidence is such a malleable thing, Abigail countered. Witness testimony can be discredited. Physical evidence can be contaminated. And how credible is the testimony of a grieving mother-in-law with a documented history of animosity toward her daughter-in-law? Emma's anger flared at the implication. There was no animosity until I realized what you really are. And what am I, Emma? The question held a taunting edge. A murderer, Emma stated flatly. You killed my son for money. You tried to kill your own baby for the same reason. On the landline, Emma could hear Rivera's phone ringing. Pick up, she silently urged. Such ugly accusations, Abigail sighed. But that's not why I called. I have a proposition for you. I'm not interested in anything you have to offer. Oh, I think you will be. Abigail's voice hardened. I want what's mine, my son and my money, Michael's trust fund, the insurance payout, all of it. Nathan is not yours anymore, Emma stated firmly. The court granted me custody. Temporary custody, Abigail corrected. And courts can change their minds, especially when a mother tearfully explains how her psychotic episode has been treated, how she's been receiving intensive therapy, how she's now stable and desperate to reconnect with her beloved child. The landline clicked as Rivera finally answered. Detective Rivera. Emma couldn't speak into the landline without alerting Abigail, but she hoped Rivera would recognize her number and listen silently. No court will give custody to a woman facing murder charges, Emma told Abigail, deliberately using words that would alert Rivera to the nature of the call. Charges that might never be filed if key witnesses were unavailable, Abigail replied, the threat unmistakable. Emma's blood ran cold, but she kept her voice steady. What exactly do you want, Abigail? I told you, my son and my money. Bring both to the old boathouse at Meridian Lake tomorrow at midnight. $500,000 in cash, the life insurance plus the trust fund. And Nathan, of course. That's impossible. I don't have access to that kind of cash, and the trust fund is legally Nathan's. You're resourceful, Emma. I'm sure you'll figure something out. Abigail's tone was dismissive. And if you're thinking of involving the police, reconsider. If I see any sign of law enforcement, I disappear, and you'll never see me again. Until, of course, I return when you least expect it. The threat hung in the air, its implications clear. Abigail would keep coming for Nathan, keep being a shadow in their lives, unless Emma complied with her demands. I need time, Emma said, stalling. You have until midnight tomorrow. Come alone with Nathan and the money. If I see anyone else, or if you don't show up, there will be consequences. The line went dead. Emma immediately turned to the landline. Rivera, did you hear that? I heard, Rivera confirmed, her voice tense. Stay where you are. I'm sending officers to your house right now, and I'm on my way. Within minutes, 2 police cars arrived at Emma's home, lights flashing but sirens silent to avoid waking Nathan. Rivera arrived shortly after, striding purposefully to the door where Emma waited. Are you all right? Rivera asked as Emma let her in. I'm fine. Nathan's still asleep. Emma led the detective to the living room. She wants me to bring Nathan and $500,000 to the boathouse tomorrow night. Rivera nodded grimly. This could be the break we've been waiting for. If we can lure her out of hiding. You want to use us as bait, Emma concluded, anxiety mounting. Not exactly, Rivera clarified. You and Nathan will remain completely safe. We'll use an undercover officer who resembles you to make the meeting, with a doll standing in for Nathan. And if Abigail realizes it's a trap? We'll have snipers positioned and assault teams ready to move in the moment we have visual confirmation. She won't get away this time. Emma sank onto the couch, the adrenaline of the call giving way to exhaustion. She's planned this carefully. She must know the risks. Criminals often make mistakes when they get desperate, Rivera noted. And Abigail is definitely desperate. She's been on the run for months, unable to access her main financial accounts, facing multiple felony charges. She's cornered, and cornered people take risks. Or become more dangerous, Emma countered. Rivera's expression softened slightly. I understand your concern, but this might be our best chance to apprehend her and remove the threat permanently. Otherwise, as she implied, she'll always be a shadow in your lives." Emma knew Rivera was right. As terrifying as the prospect was, a confrontation with Abigail was inevitable. Better to have it happen under controlled circumstances than as a surprise attack when they least expected it. "What do you need me to do?" she asked. "Nothing tonight. Tomorrow we'll need to borrow some of your clothes for our undercover officer. Other than that, just maintain your normal routine. We'll have officers watching the house continuously, and I'll personally oversee the operation at the boathouse." After Rivera left, assuring Emma that officers would remain outside all night, Emma checked on Nathan once more. He slept peacefully, unaware of the danger or the plans being made to protect him. As Emma finally settled into bed, sleep eluded her. Abigail's voice echoed in her mind, the casual menace, the calculated threats. After months of fearing a shadowy presence, the threat had finally materialized. Tomorrow would bring either resolution or escalation, and Emma wasn't sure which possibility frightened her more. The following day unfolded with an air of tense anticipation. Emma went through the motions of her normal routine with Nathan, feeding, playing, napping, while police officers came and went, setting up the operation. Detective Rivera arrived mid-morning with Officer Reyes, a woman in her 50s whose silver hair and general build resembled Emma's enough to be convincing in dim light. "Officer Reyes will be playing your role tonight," Rivera explained as the officer examined Emma's coat and sweater. "She's one of our most experienced undercover operatives." Emma studied the woman who would be impersonating her. Though there were differences up close, the general silhouette was similar enough to potentially fool Abigail at a distance. "What about the baby?" Emma asked. "Abigail will know immediately if it's not Nathan." Rivera produced a realistic-looking doll from a bag. "This is specially weighted to feel like an infant. It will be wrapped in Nathan's blanket and hat to carry his scent. In the darkness, with the blanket partially covering its face, it should be convincing enough until we can get Abigail in position." The meticulous planning should have been reassuring, but Emma found her anxiety mounting as the day progressed. So many things could go wrong. What if Abigail brought accomplices? What if she had already scoped out the boathouse and discovered the police presence? What if she was watching Emma's house right now, noting the unusual activity? By afternoon, Rivera had assembled the complete operation team in Emma's living room. Officer Reyes, 2 tactical commanders, and the communications coordinator who would maintain contact between all units. They reviewed aerial photographs of the boathouse and surrounding area, marking sniper positions, approach routes, and potential escape paths Abigail might attempt. "Our primary concern is taking her alive," Rivera emphasized. "We want her to stand trial for what she's done. But officer safety comes first. If she presents a lethal threat, our snipers are authorized to neutralize it." The clinical language did little to mask the gravity of what was being discussed. This wasn't just an arrest. It was a potentially lethal confrontation with a woman who had already demonstrated a willingness to kill. As the team continued their planning, Emma retreated to the nursery where Nathan was waking from his afternoon nap. His face lit up with a smile when he saw her, tiny arms reaching upward in a gesture that never failed to melt her heart. Emma lifted him, holding him close, drawing comfort from his warmth and innocent trust. "Everything's going to be all right," she whispered, as much to reassure herself as him. "After tonight, we can finally start living without looking over our shoulders." Tom arrived at 7 p.m. as arranged, bringing dinner for everyone and a supportive presence for Emma. As a former attorney, he understood better than most the legal implications of the operation and had offered valuable suggestions during the planning phase. "Grace will be here at 8, he reminded Emma as they ate in the kitchen, away from the operational discussions continuing in the living room. The three of us will stay here with Nathan while the team handles the boathouse. Emma nodded, grateful for their support but still uneasy. I keep thinking about what ifs. What if she doesn't show? What if she sends someone else? What if she's watching right now? That's natural, Tom assured her. But Rivera is thorough. She's considered every contingency. I know. It's just, after all these months of waiting, it feels surreal that tonight might actually end it. Tom reached across the table, covering her hand with his. Whatever happens tonight, you've already won the most important battle. Nathan is safe, thriving, loved. Nothing Abigail does can change that now. His words provided the perspective Emma needed. Beyond the fear and tension of the moment lay the bigger picture. Nathan's future, secure and bright, despite the dark circumstances of his early life. Grace arrived as scheduled, immediately taking Nathan from Emma to give her a break. The three of them created a pocket of normalcy amid the controlled chaos of the police operation, discussing ordinary topics like Nathan's recent developmental milestones and the community garden's progress. At 10 p.m., Rivera gathered everyone for a final briefing. We move out in 30 minutes. Officer Reyes will arrive at the boathouse at 11:45, 15 minutes before the designated meeting time. Sniper teams are already in position, and perimeter teams will be in place by 11:15. She turned to Emma. Once we leave, I want you to activate all security systems and remain inside until we contact you. Under no circumstances should you leave the house or respond to any communication that doesn't come through our established channels. I understand, Emma assured her. With any luck, by morning Abigail Wilson will be in custody, and this chapter of your lives can finally close. As the police team prepared to depart, Emma handed Officer Reyes the items she had requested. Emma's coat, Nathan's blanket and hat, a baby carrier identical to the one Emma used. The reality of the situation struck her anew as she watched this stranger dressed to impersonate her, preparing to confront the woman who had caused so much pain. Be careful, Emma told her quietly. Reyes nodded, her expression resolute. I will. And we'll get her, for Nathan, for your son, and for you. After the team departed, Emma, Tom, and Grace settled in the living room with Nathan, who was blissfully unaware of the tension surrounding him. Emma had arranged for Rivera to call the landline with updates, and the phone sat on the coffee table like a ticking bomb, simultaneously dreaded and anticipated. At 11:30, the phone rang. Emma answered immediately. All teams in position, Rivera reported. Officer Reyes has arrived at the staging area and will approach the boathouse on schedule. Any sign of Abigail? Emma asked. Not yet, but our thermal imaging has detected a vehicle parked approximately half a mile from the boathouse, concealed in the woods. We're maintaining surveillance on it. Emma relayed the information to Tom and Grace after hanging up. The waiting was excruciating, each minute crawling by with leaden feet. Nathan, sensing the adult's tension, became fussy, and Emma walked him around the room, the familiar motion soothing them both. The phone rang again at 11:55. Officer Reyes has reached the boathouse, Rivera informed her. No contact yet. The vehicle in the woods remained stationary. Emma checked the clock obsessively as midnight approached, then passed. 5 minutes after the designated meeting time, the phone remained silent. 10 minutes, 15. Finally, at 12:20, the phone rang again. Emma snatched it up. We have movement, Rivera said tersely. Someone approaching the boathouse from the lakeside. Emma's heart raced. Abigail? Can't confirm identity yet. Figure is wearing dark clothing, hood up. A pause. They're entering the boathouse now. The line remained open as Rivera relayed updates to Emma in real time. Visual contact established. Female subject. Approaching Officer Reyes. Verbal exchange initiated. Emma strained to hear background noises, but Rivera's voice was the only sound coming through the line. Suddenly, there was a commotion on Rivera's end. Raised voices, the crackle of radio transmissions, urgent commands. "She's armed!" Rivera exclaimed. "All teams, subject is armed. Move in, move in!" The sound of shouting filled the line, then a sharp crack that could only be gunfire. Emma clutched the phone, her knuckles white as chaos erupted on the other end. "Officer down! Shots fired!" Rivera's voice was distant now, as if she'd moved away from her phone. "Subject is fleeing toward the east perimeter." More shouting, more gunfire. Emma stood frozen in her living room, Tom and Grace flanking her, all of them staring at the phone as if it could provide visual confirmation of the unfolding crisis. Then, silence. Long, terrible seconds of silence. "Rivera?" Emma finally ventured. "Detective Rivera, what's happening?" A rustling sound, then Rivera's voice, breathless. "We have her. Abigail Wilson is in custody. Repeat, subject is in custody." Relief washed over Emma in a dizzying wave. "And Officer Reyes?" "Wounded but stable. Shot in the shoulder. Paramedics are attending to her now." Emma sank onto the couch, her legs suddenly unable to support her. "It's over," she whispered. "I'll call you back with more details once we've secured the scene," Rivera promised before ending the call. The living room fell silent except for Nathan's soft breathing. He had fallen asleep during the tense waiting, his tiny body nestled against Grace's shoulder. The contrast between the violence at the boathouse and the peaceful infant was stark and poignant. "She's really caught," Emma murmured, still processing the reality. "After all this time." Tom squeezed her shoulder gently. "Justice for Michael, safety for Nathan. It's what you've been fighting for." The phone rang again an hour later. Rivera sounded exhausted but satisfied. "Abigail Wilson is being processed at the station," she reported. "She's refusing to speak without a lawyer, but that doesn't matter. We have more than enough evidence without a confession." "How did it happen?" Emma asked, needing to understand the events that had unfolded. "She approached by boat from the far side of the lake, a blind spot she must have identified in advance. She entered the boathouse, demanded to see Nathan and the money. When Officer Reyes said she needed to see Abigail's face clearly first, Abigail pulled a gun. Officer Reyes responded according to training, creating distance and calling for backup, but Abigail fired before our teams could reach her." "She shot first? Without provocation?" "Yes. There's no question it was attempted murder. After shooting Officer Reyes, she tried to flee, but our perimeter teams intercepted her. She fired at officers again before being subdued. The cold calculation of it all, approaching by boat to avoid detection, bringing a gun, shooting without hesitation, confirmed everything Emma had feared about Abigail's nature. This wasn't a woman driven by maternal instinct or even greed alone. This was someone capable of extraordinary violence in pursuit of her goals. "What happens now?" Emma asked. "She'll be arraigned tomorrow morning on multiple charges: attempted murder of a police officer, assault with a deadly weapon, attempted murder of Nathan, first-degree murder of Michael, insurance fraud, and more. Given the severity and the evidence, I don't anticipate bail being granted. She'll remain in custody until trial." After ending the call, Emma shared the details with Tom and Grace, who had insisted on staying until the situation was resolved. The reality of Abigail's capture was slowly sinking in, bringing with it not exhilaration but a quiet, profound relief. "You should try to get some rest," Grace suggested, noting the exhaustion evident in Emma's face. "Tomorrow will bring its own challenges." Emma nodded, suddenly aware of how drained she felt. The constant vigilance of the past months, culminating in tonight's ordeal, had depleted her reserves of energy and emotion. After Grace and Tom departed with promises to return in the morning, Emma checked the security system one final time. a habit she wondered if she would ever break, and went upstairs to look in on Nathan. He slept soundly in his crib, one tiny fist curled beside his cheek, untroubled by the night's events. "It's really over," Emma whispered, gently stroking his dark hair. "You're safe now, truly safe." For the first time in months, Emma slept without waking to check the security monitors, without listening for unusual sounds, without the underlying anxiety that had become so familiar she'd almost stopped noticing it. The relief was profound, like setting down a heavy burden she'd carried for so long, her muscles had forgotten what it felt like to be unburdened. Morning brought a flurry of activity, calls from Rivera with updates, visits from Tom and Grace, a statement Emma needed to provide for the prosecution. Amidst it all, Nathan maintained his usual schedule, demanding feedings and diaper changes with the perfect self-absorption of infancy. The local news carried the story of Abigail's dramatic capture, though Nathan's involvement was carefully omitted to protect his privacy. Emma avoided watching, preferring to receive her information directly from Rivera rather than sensationalized media accounts. "The arraignment is scheduled for 2 p.m., Rivera informed her during a mid-morning call. "The prosecutor is confident all charges will stick. The evidence is overwhelming, especially with Officer Reyes's testimony about being shot without provocation." "Will I need to testify at the trial?" Emma asked, bouncing Nathan gently as he began to fuss. "Eventually, yes, but that's months away. The prosecutor will work with you to prepare your testimony well in advance." After the call, Emma took Nathan for a walk, their first without constantly scanning for threats. The simple pleasure of strolling beside the lake, enjoying the summer breeze without fear, felt like a luxury she'd forgotten she could have. Tom joined them, matching his pace to Emma's slower stride. "How does it feel?" he asked. "Knowing she's behind bars?" "Surreal," Emma admitted. "After living with the threat for so long, it's hard to believe it's actually over. I keep expecting to see her around every corner." "That's normal. It will take time for your mind to catch up to the new reality." They reached a bench overlooking the lake and sat, Nathan dozing in his stroller. The water sparkled in the sunshine, the same water that had almost claimed Nathan's life months ago. Now it was just water again. Beautiful, ordinary, no longer a symbol of threat. "Have you thought about what comes next?" Tom asked. Emma considered the question. For months, her focus had been singular: protect Nathan, seek justice for Michael. With those goals essentially achieved, the future stretched before her, uncharted but full of possibilities. "I want to provide Nathan with as normal a childhood as possible," she said finally. "He deserves that after everything he's been through, even if he's too young to remember it. Beyond that?" She shrugged. "I haven't really thought about it." "You have time now," Tom reminded her. "Time without fear, time to plan, time to simply enjoy being Nathan's grandmother." The thought was both liberating and overwhelming. After months of crisis management, the ordinary challenges of raising a child, choosing schools, planning for college, instilling values, seemed almost mundane yet profoundly important. "I think Michael would be proud," Emma said softly, "of Nathan, of how he's thriving despite everything. And maybe even of me, for fighting for him." "I have no doubt of it," Tom agreed. "You've done something extraordinary, Emma. Never forget that." Later that afternoon, as Nathan napped, Emma received a call from Rivera. "Abigail has been arraigned on all charges," the detective reported. "No bail, as expected. She'll remain in custody until trial." "Did she say anything?" Emma couldn't help asking. "Not much. Her attorney did most of the talking. But there was a moment." Rivera hesitated. "After the judge denied bail, Abigail looked directly at me and said, 'This isn't over.' Just that. Nothing more." A chill ran through Emma despite the summer warmth. A threat? Possibly. Or just posturing. Either way, she's securely detained in a maximum security facility. Multiple charges, including attempted murder of a police officer, means she's considered high risk. She has no access to phones or visitors except her attorney. So we're truly safe. Yes, Rivera confirmed. You and Nathan can finally live without looking over your shoulders. That evening, Emma sat in the rocking chair in Nathan's nursery, holding him close as he drifted toward sleep after his final feeding of the day. His dark eyes, fighting to stay open, fixed on her face with that mysterious infant gaze that seemed both new to the world and ancient in its wisdom. "You know what today is?" Emma whispered. "It's the first day of the rest of our lives. The first day without her shadow over us." Nathan responded with a milky yawn, his eyelids finally surrendering to sleep. Emma continued rocking, in no hurry to place him in his crib, savoring the weight of him in her arms, the sweet baby smell of his hair, the perfect trust with which he slept against her chest. This was victory. Not just Abigail's capture, but this moment of peace. This child safe and loved. This future now unburdened by threat. Whatever challenges lay ahead, and raising a child in her 60s would certainly present many, they were the ordinary challenges of life, not the extraordinary dangers they had faced. As Emma finally laid Nathan in his crib, she realized she was crying, not from fear or grief, but from a profound relief that had been months in coming. Michael was gone, a loss she would carry always. But his son lived on, a living legacy more precious than any inheritance. And Emma had been granted the extraordinary privilege of guiding that legacy into the future. "Good night, sweet boy," she whispered, gently stroking Nathan's cheek. "Tomorrow is a new day." 6 months after Abigail's arrest, Emma sat in another courtroom, this time for a very different purpose. Judge Harris, the same judge who had granted her temporary custody of Nathan, reviewed the documents before her with the same careful attention she had shown at their first meeting. "Mrs. Wilson," Judge Harris began, looking up over her reading glasses, "I've reviewed all the reports from Child Protective Services over the past 9 months, including the monthly home visits, Nathan's medical evaluations, and your own progress with the support services recommended by the court." Emma sat straight in her chair. Nathan balanced on her lap. At 9 months old, he was an active, curious baby, currently fascinated by the wooden railing separating them from the judge's bench. "I must say I'm impressed with what I see here," Judge Harris continued with a small smile. "Nathan is meeting all developmental milestones. He is, by all accounts, a happy, healthy, well-adjusted infant. And you, Mrs. Wilson, have demonstrated remarkable resilience and capability in what can only be described as extraordinary circumstances." Relief washed through Emma. She had known the reports were positive, but hearing the judge's assessment confirmed that her efforts had been recognized. "Additionally," Judge Harris added, "I've received letters of support from numerous community members, including Dr. Grace Hernandez, Thomas Reynolds, S. Scroll, and Detective Diana Rivera, all attesting to your dedication and fitness as Nathan's guardian." The judge shuffled her papers, then looked directly at Emma. "Given these factors, and considering that Abigail Wilson has been convicted of attempted murder and is serving a life sentence without possibility of parole, I am granting your petition for permanent custody and adoption of Nathan Wilson." The gavel struck, and suddenly it was official. Nathan was legally hers, not just her grandson by blood, but her son by law. Emma hugged him close, tears of joy threatening to spill. "Congratulations, Mrs. Wilson," Judge Harris said with genuine warmth. "Or perhaps I should say, congratulations to both of you. It's clear that Nathan has found exactly where he belongs." Outside the courtroom, Tom and Grace waited anxiously. Their faces broke into smiles when they saw Emma's expression. "It's done," Emma announced, bouncing Nathan on her hip. "The adoption is final. He's officially Nathan Wilson. Forever." Grace embraced them both, while Tom shook Emma's hand with formal gravity before breaking into a wide grin. "This calls for a celebration," he declared. "I've made reservations at Giovanni's, high chair included." The small Italian restaurant had become a favorite for their gatherings, accommodating both Nathan's occasional fussiness and the adults' desire for good food and conversation. As they settled around a corner table, Emma found herself observing her unlikely family with a sense of wonder. Grace, the dedicated nurse whose professional interest had evolved into genuine friendship. Tom, the retired attorney who had stepped in as legal advisor and become something more, a steadfast friend, a male presence in Nathan's life. Perhaps even something Emma wasn't quite ready to name but felt blossoming nonetheless. And Nathan, the miracle at the center of it all, currently more interested in the breadstick he was gumming than the adults' conversation. "To new beginnings," Tom proposed, raising his glass of sparkling cider. They had all given up wine in solidarity with Emma, who had stopped drinking entirely once Nathan came into her care. "And to justice," Grace added. "Finally served." Abigail's trial had concluded 2 months earlier with a guilty verdict on all counts. The evidence had been overwhelming. Carlos Mendez's testimony about tampering with Michael's brakes, Michael's journal detailing his suspicions and the changes to his will, the cabin where Abigail had given birth, the security footage showing her buying supplies consistent with a home delivery, Emma's testimony about witnessing the attempt to drown Nathan, and finally, Abigail's shooting of Officer Reyes during the sting operation. The prosecutor had systematically dismantled Abigail's defense of postpartum psychosis, presenting evidence of her long-term planning and financial motives. The jury had deliberated for just 3 hours before returning with a guilty verdict. "I still can't believe it's really over," Emma admitted, helping Nathan with his sippy cup. "Sometimes I wake up in the night and check the security monitors out of habit." "That will fade with time," Tom assured her. "The mind needs to relearn safety after trauma." "Speaking of safety," Grace interjected, "have you thought more about the preschool we discussed? The waiting list is already quite long for next fall." "Preschool?" Emma laughed. "He's barely crawling." "It's never too early to plan," Grace insisted, "especially for the good programs." The conversation drifted to future plans, Nathan's education, the modifications Emma might need to make to the house as he grew more mobile, the trust fund Michael had established that would eventually provide for Nathan's college education, ordinary concerns, practical matters, the stuff of normal life rather than the high-stakes drama that had dominated their relationship for so long. After dinner, they returned to Emma's house for coffee and the small celebration cake Grace had baked. Nathan, overstimulated from the day's events, became cranky and rubbed his eyes with tiny fists. "I think someone needs his bedtime routine," Emma observed, lifting him from the high chair. "I'll be back down after he's settled." The familiar ritual of bath, story, and bedtime bottle soothed Nathan as it always did. As Emma rocked him in the nursery, she found herself reflecting on how far they had come since that February day when she had pulled him, cold and barely breathing, from Meridian Lake. The nursery, once hastily assembled to meet the requirements of the home inspection, had evolved into a warm, personalized space. Photos of Michael at various ages lined one wall, Emma's way of ensuring Nathan would know his father, even if only through stories and images. Toys appropriate for his developmental stage filled a colorful chest. Books, many handed down from Michael's childhood, lined the shelves Tom had built. "You know what today means?" Emma whispered as Nathan's eyelids grew heavy. "It means no one can ever take you away. You're home, Nathan. Forever home." Nathan responded with a sleepy smile, his hand curling around Emma's finger as he drifted off. She continued rocking, in no hurry to lay him down, savoring the peaceful moment after the emotional intensity of the day. When she finally returned downstairs, she found Tom and Grace in quiet conversation on the porch, coffee cups in hand. "He's down?" Grace asked as Emma joined them. "Out like a light. It's been a big day for all of us." The three sat in companionable silence, watching the sunset paint Meridian Lake in shades of gold and crimson. The same lake that had nearly claimed Nathan's life now provided a beautiful backdrop for their celebration. "I've been thinking," Emma said after a while, "about writing everything down, the whole story, from finding Nathan to today. Not for publication or anything, just for him when he's old enough to understand." "That's a wonderful idea," Grace encouraged. "It's part of his history, however difficult some aspects might be." "How will you handle the parts about Abigail?" Tom asked. "That won't be easy to explain." Emma had pondered this question extensively. "With age-appropriate honesty," she decided. "When he's very young, I'll simply tell him his mother couldn't take care of him, so I do instead. As he gets older, I'll share more details, always emphasizing that none of it was his fault, that her choices reflect only on her, not on him." "And Michael?" Grace asked gently. "Everything," Emma said firmly. "All the good things about his father, Michael's kindness, his intelligence, his integrity, the way he changed his will to protect Nathan before he was even born. The fact that his last journal entry was about his determination to protect his child." Her voice caught. "I want Nathan to know his father loved him, sight unseen, enough to die for him." Tom reached over to squeeze her hand, a gesture of support that had become familiar over the months of shared challenges. "You're giving Nathan an extraordinary gift," he said quietly. "Not just a home and safety, but a sense of where he comes from, who he is." "That's what family does," Emma replied simply. As darkness fell, their conversation turned to more practical matters. Grace's upcoming vacation, Tom's community garden project, Emma's consideration of part-time work now that Nathan was older and the immediate crisis had passed. "The hospital has approached me about consulting on their pediatric protocols," Emma mentioned. "Just 10 hours a week, and I could bring Nathan with me for most of it. They're even offering childcare during meetings." "That sounds perfect," Grace encouraged. "Using your expertise without sacrificing time with Nathan. And it would be good for you to reconnect with your professional identity," Tom added. "You're not just Nathan's grandmother, as important as that role is." Emma nodded, appreciating their understanding. The past 9 months had been all-consuming. Her identity narrowed to a singular focus: protect Nathan, provide for Nathan, love Nathan. The prospect of reclaiming other aspects of herself, while still prioritizing her grandson, felt like another step toward normalcy. As the evening wound down, Grace departed first, citing an early hospital shift the next day. Tom lingered, helping Emma clear away the coffee cups and cake plates. "It's been quite a journey," he observed as they stood in the kitchen. "From that day by the lake to now." "I couldn't have done it without you," Emma said, meaning it. "Your legal advice, your friendship, your support with Nathan, it's made all the difference." Tom smiled, the lines around his eyes crinkling. "It's been my privilege. Watching you fight for that boy, seeing him thrive despite everything. It's restored my faith in what's good about this world." There was something in his expression, a warmth beyond friendship, that both thrilled and terrified Emma. At 62, romance had seemed a closed chapter in her life. Then again, at 62, motherhood had seemed equally improbable. Yet here she was, raising an infant. "I should go," Tom said, breaking the moment. "You must be exhausted after today." Emma walked him to the door, where he paused, seemingly on the verge of saying something more. Instead, he simply squeezed her hand again. "Good night, Emma. Congratulations again on making it official." After securing the door behind him, old habits die hard, Emma made one final check of the security system before heading upstairs. She paused in the doorway of Nathan's room, watching the gentle rise and fall of his chest in the soft glow of the nightlight. 9 months ago, she had been a grieving mother living alone, her days measured out in empty routines. Now she was raising a child, surrounded by friends who had become family, engaged with a community that had rallied around them in their time of need. The path had been unimaginably difficult, marked by tragedy and danger. Yet standing here, watching Nathan sleep safely in his crib, Emma couldn't regret a single step of the journey. Every struggle, every fear, every sleepless night had led to this moment, this child, this home, this life they were building together. "Good night, sweet boy," she whispered. "Sweet dreams. Tomorrow is waiting for us." As Emma finally retired to her own room, she glanced at the photo of Michael on her nightstand, smiling, vibrant, forever frozen at 33. She touched it gently, a familiar gesture of connection to the son she had lost. "We did it, Michael," she murmured. "Your son is safe, loved, legally protected. I kept my promise." Outside her window, Meridian Lake reflected the moonlight, its surface peaceful and still. The same water that had almost claimed Nathan's life now offered only beauty and serenity, a fitting metaphor for their journey from trauma to healing, from danger to safety, from uncertainty to home. Emma Wilson, retired nurse, grieving mother, adoptive parent to her grandson, settled into bed with the profound exhaustion of a day well lived. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, a teething baby, perhaps, or the logistics of balancing part-time work with childcare, or simply the ordinary fatigue of raising a child in her 60s. But these were the challenges of life, not survival. These were the problems she had fought to have the privilege of facing, and face them she would, with the same determination and love that had carried her through the extraordinary circumstances that had led to this ordinary, precious night. In the quiet darkness, Emma closed her eyes and slept, deeply, peacefully, without fear, for the first time in longer than she could remember.